Welcome to an introduction to Coppélia. In this video, I'll give you a brief overview of the ballet. I'll introduce you both to the choreographer and the composer, and give you a few ideas of what you might want to look for should you have an opportunity to go and enjoy a performance. Coppélia is a ballet presented in 3 acts. Act 1 opens in the town plaza, where we meet the young couple of Swanhilde and Franz. It is clear that the two of them are very much in love. Unfortunately, however, Franz is also somewhat smitten with the shy and intriguing Coppélia. Coppélia is the daughter of Dr. Coppelius, the town's rather mysterious toymaker. She sits every day on her father's porch reading, rarely interacting with anyone. Much to Swanhilde's consternation, Franz routinely tries to catch Coppelia's attention. The mayor arrives and announces that there will be a festival the next day celebrating the town's new bells, and that all couples wed on that day will receive a generous dowry. Swanhilde threatens not to marry Franz if he doesn't stop flirting with Coppélia. As fate would have it, Swanhilde ends up in possession of the keys to Dr. Coppelius's house. She makes plans with her friends to break into his home that night and confront Coppélia. Separately, Franz makes plans to climb up onto Dr. Coppelius's balcony that evening for an investigation of his own. The stage is set for Act 2, which takes place in the unsuspecting toymaker's workshop. Swanhilde and her friends break in and discover that Coppélia is, in fact, a doll, and not human at all. Dr. Coppelius returns home and discovers them. He chases them away, but Swanhilde hides in Coppelia's place and disguises herself as Coppélia. While she's hiding, Franz arrives, and Dr. Coppelius offers him a tainted cup of wine to sedate him. He plans to cast some sort of spell to bring Coppélia to life so that he will finally have the daughter that he longs for. This may not end well for Franz. Swanhilde, disguised as Coppélia, initially convinces Dr. Coppelius that his doll has come to life, and she wakes Franz and reveals to him that Coppélia is in fact nothing but a doll. The two of them escape, leaving Dr. Coppelius distraught in his workshop. In Act 3, we return to the plaza, where the Bell Festival is about to begin. Just as the couples are to be married, Dr. Coppelius arrives and complains of the damage that has been done to his workshop. Swanhilde apologizes and offers him her dowry, but the mayor intervenes and pays Dr. Coppelius for the damages. The ballet ends with the wedding ceremony and a celebration. Now that you have an overview of the ballet itself, let's look at the history of the story and the production. The original story was written by Ernst Theodor Wilhelm Hoffmann, also known as ETA Hoffmann. He was born in 1776 in Königsberg, East Prussia, which is presently known as Kaliningrad, Russia. Over the course of his lifetime, he was a jurist, composer, artist, and music critic. But he's perhaps best known as a significant author of the Romantic period. In fact, his stories provide the foundation for 2 ballets that are still performed today. The ballet Coppélia is based on his story of the Sandman. But he was also the author of the beloved Christmas classic, The Nutcracker. Now, it is worth noting that Dr. Coppelius in the original story, The Sandman, is actually far more sinister than his portrayal in the ballet. Both The Nutcracker and Coppélia share a few common elements. Each feature a mysterious craftsman with an interest in magic that makes automatons. Obviously, in Coppélia, we have Dr. Coppelius, while in The Nutcracker, you have Herr Drosselmeyer, who makes lifelike automatons that entertain the party guests in the first act. Automatons were actually extremely popular throughout Europe in the 18th century. Some resembled animals, such as swans, tigers, and elephants, while others took on human form and were designed to play instruments, write poetry, or even play chess. Although the one that supposedly played chess was an elaborate hoax because actually there was a human hidden inside, and it wasn't an automaton at all. Hoffmann's The Sandman would never have been transformed into Coppélia without the efforts of these 2 gentlemen. The man on the left is Arthur Saint-Léon, and he was the choreographer for Coppélia. He was born in Paris in 1821, His father was the dance master for the court in Stuttgart. His parents encouraged him to study both violin and ballet. As a young man, he toured across Europe as a dancer and composer, eventually teaching and choreographing both for the Paris Opera and for the Imperial Ballet in St. Petersburg. Coppélia was staged in Paris just before his death in 1870. The gentleman on the right is the composer Leo Delibes. He was born in France in 1836, where he studied music at the Conservatoire de Paris under Adolphe Adam. Adam also composed music for ballet, and in particular is remembered as the composer of both Giselle and Le Corsaire. During his career, Delibes composed both operas and ballets, and among his most notable ballet commissions are Coppélia, which he wrote in 1870, and Sylvia, which he wrote 6 years later in 1876. Peter Tchaikovsky, the famed composer of both The Nutcracker and Swan Lake, was so impressed by Delibes' music that he said of Sylvia, "It was the first ballet in which music constitutes not just the main, but the sole interest. What charm, what grace, what melodic, rhythmic, harmonic richness! I was ashamed. Had I known that this music earlier, then of course I would not have written Swan Lake." So you've now met the choreographer and the composer. Hopefully you have your tickets and you're excited to head to the theater for a wonderful night of dancing, storytelling, and music. You're just about ready to go. There are just 2 other details I want to share with you so that you don't miss them during the performance. What are they? Well, the first thing you'll want to watch for is the delightful inclusion of folk dances within Coppélia. In fact, Coppélia was one of the first ballets that merged classical ballet with folk dancing. In Act 1, Saint-Léon treats the audience to 2 different folk dances. You will see a Polish mazurka, which is danced in 3/4 time with accents on the second and third beat. And you'll also likely see a Hungarian czardas. The czardas is always danced in 2/4 or 4/4 time, and the women wear distinctive skirts like the ones shown here in this picture from the Empire Theatre's 1900 production of Coppélia. Another example can be seen in this photo of Dame Adeline Genet when she danced the role of Swanhilda in 1906. Both the czardas and the mazurka are in Act 1. Be aware, however, that not all ballet companies perform all of the original divertissements, so depending upon the performance you see, the company you see may choose to perform only one of them or may include them both. Now, in addition to watching for the folk dances, the final item you'll want to watch for has to do with Delibes' music, and specifically his use of leitmotifs. A leitmotif is a recurring musical theme that's associated with a particular character. Delibes used them extensively in his ballets. Leitmotifs were first used by Richard Wagner, a German composer who was about 20 years older than Delibes, and Wagner used leitmotifs for many of the characters in his operas. Leitmotifs are still extremely common today, particularly in film scores. John Williams relies upon them extensively. For example, you'll likely be familiar with the Imperial March for Darth Vader, the Raiders March for Indiana Jones, Hedwig's theme for Harry Potter, and the Jaws theme, those menacing 2 notes that still strike fear into the hearts of swimmers everywhere. Similarly, Delibes developed leitmotifs for Swanhilda, Dr. Coppelius, Franz, as well as an infectious leitmotif for the dolls in Dr. Coppelius's workshop. Be sure to listen for all of them when you go and enjoy the performance. That concludes this brief introduction to Coppélia. Be sure to check with your local ballet company and find out when they're performing Coppélia, and prepare to be enthralled by an enchanting evening of dance and music. In the meantime, head to discoveryquests.com for additional projects inspired by Coppélia and other ballets. You'll find instructions for building your own simple automata and other opportunities to explore the Romantic period in the arts and literature.